Hello, I'm Elena from Brazil,
I am Roxana from Peru.
and we're going to present our project now. So, the title of our presentation is Writing for Resilience and Interculturality, a binational students' journal from Peru and Brazil. So, the adventurers, that's us, we very much identify with the citation that goes that the secret to making teaching feel like an adventure is to embrace that risk and the unpredictability of it all and view that as part of the adventure of being a teacher. So we understand that as an adventure and as a risk because we propose to students things that are related to their real life, but we are not sure at first if they're going to be on board, if it's going to be meaningful to them. So it's always a risk, it's always an adventure, but we do like the thrill. And that's how we've been working in our teaching experience. And here's how the presentation is organized. So we'll present you with the theoretical background first, then we'll present you our research question, the methodology we followed, and then some final remarks. And concerning the theoretical background, we have some review of literature. Very briefly, we agree with Pennycook when it comes to language learning, because we also believe that we should work with language as a local practice, and we understand language as a form of action in a specific place and time. And we also believe that languages are a product of the deeply social and cultural activities in which people engage. So these beliefs, this understanding is what guides, is what drives us as teachers in our practices in the classroom with our students. We are also driven by the Freudian critical pedagogy and participatory literacies, which states that language is not simply a means of expression or communication. Rather, it is a practice that constructs and is constructed by their social surroundings, their histories, their possibilities for the future. And we try to put this concept into practice by reflecting and applying new learning to real life and authentic experiences. So that's how we work with our students to make them engage in language learning as a meaningful practice. And the research question that leads or that has been leading our work and that led this project specifically is how can the production of a student's journal contribute to a student's English writing competence so that it motivates students to gain their own voices and agencies? So it's a writing project. And now I leave you with Roxana that is going to present the methodology that was used in the development of this project.
Thank you, Maria Elena. Now let's continue with the setting. First of all, we have the Peruvian context. I work in a public school, Cesar Coila Tamayo, located in Tacna, which follow a HEC model. Students study for 8 hours a day, and an intercultural bilingual model, where students study in Spanish, English 5 hours a week, and Aymara, the native language, for 2 hours a week. The teaching follows a communicative approach to develop 3 competences: communicate, read, and write different text types in English as a foreign language, starting from meaningful situations that orchestrate different learning activities in a learning experience or a didactic unit. Participants. I worked with 109 students from the 7th cycle of secondary education, divided in 4 groups: 3A, 4A, 4B, 4C, and 4D. Students aged between 15 to 16 years old. The second setting is the Federal Institute of Santa Catarina, Paliosa campus, which is located in Santa Catarina, Brazil. What about the teaching? It's a secondary technical education program where students study 120 hours of English language, distributed along 3 academic semesters, classes from 1 hour 40 minutes once a week. Participants 16 students from one intermediate level group aged between 16 and 20 years old. And this is Brazil. As you can see, we work with the two sides of our beautiful South American continent, Peru and Brazil. Let me tell you about the Peruvian experience. So, as teacher in a public school, I act in line to the national curriculum for regular basic education. And one of its principles is to start from a meaningful situation. And what is this? Teachers interpret this as a piece of writing um, inspired by the students' immediate needs and motivations in their local context. Basically, it can contain 5 elements like first the global context, that is the general panorama, the subject, the local context in which students feel the problem, the social problem that affects them, and the questioning that motivates students' reflection, enhance critical thinking, and um, recover previous knowledge. Finally, the challenge that for the in order to organize this journal, usually the product is a piece of writing. Let's read this example. Due to a passive life in front of the TV or excessive use of electronic devices, young people have high rates of obesity and other associated diseases. And that is why Marta, fourth grade high school student at Cesar Coahuila Tamayo School, recognizes that she and her partners do not take care of their health since they are not eating well and doing little physical activity. Given this, she asks how does little physical activity affects people's health? What are the consequences of excessive use of electronic devices? What could you do to improve their physical activities? Our challenge is to elaborate 2 posters with recommendations to promote physical activities and good eating habits. This was an example of a meaningful situation. And this meaningful situation orchestrates a set of learning activities in a specific period of time. And teachers, teachers can use different communicative teaching methodology, but let me introduce you the ones I use for this project. First, the presentation practice production. It fits well with standardized text with simple structures and motivates individual writing projects. Here, uh, the writing is presented following the steps of a product writing approach. On the right, we have this process, the teaching process, well organized. First, the presentation, starting with a meaningful situation. The teacher provides the appropriate input with reading and listening activities. Here, in this is the first stage, the model is presented. Then, the practice stage, in which students rehearse the grammar forms that are that needs to write the product, the right written product, and finally the productions in line with a product writing approach. And in other words, they uh, reproduce the previous model. They imitate the model that was presented on the first stage, and in use of the language they had practiced. And here you can observe a written product by a student. In this case, it's a Facebook post. This approach works well with texts that require self-expressions, the telling of their personal experiences, and they have simple forms like WhatsApp conversations, advertisements, Facebook posts. On the other hand, we have the problem-based learning, which fits well with more expressive text with complex structures that motivates collaborative writing projects. The text follows the steps of process writing. Uh, on the right, you can observe this process better. We have a first stage in which the problem is assigned, starting from a meaningful situation. Again, the teacher provides the appropriate reading and listening for students to understand the topic or the problem in a global sense. Then the students identify what they need to solve the problem and they do some research. The grammar is implicit in the understanding of the text. And finally, they apply what they have learned to solve the problem, creating a complex text following a process writing approach. This process writing approach has four specific phases. The first one is the pre-writing activities to generate ideas. Here they use strategies like guiding questions, vocabulary activities, brainstorming, and the outlining in which they set the main idea, secondary idea, the examples, details. Then uh, they do the drafting in which they write a complete text, but they use strategies like breaking up the text in small pieces. Each participant assume the responsibility to produce a specific part, and finally they join the text. Then they start with the revising. The teachers gives a group feedback follow in use of a checklist with specific criteria like organization of ideas, lexic, cohesion, and um, coherence. The last phase is editing. Here, students continue receiving group feedback um, in use of a checklist with specific criteria like capitalization, spelling, and punctuation. Here, let me present you the breaking up strategy in which an article is divided in four paragraphs: the title, the introduction, the supporting paragraph one, the supporting paragraph two, and the conclusion. Each student assumed the responsibility to create each part, but also assume a role in the group like chief editor, graphic designer, time controller, and photographer. You can observe here a complete text created by the students. In this case, is an article which the fourth part in title, introduction, supporting paragraph one, supporting paragraph two, and the conclusion. These approaches goes well with fanzines, persuasive articles, explanatory articles. By the midterm, we wanted to know about the students' perception of our writing activities. And we observed that most of them, 73%, think that writing is a challenge. Um, that means it is neither difficult nor easy. And just 17% think it's easy. And most of the students prefer working in groups, 88%, but half of them thinks that our collaborative work is well organized and students really assume roles and responsibilities. The other half thinks that we need to improve our techniques, our collaborative work, and it's important to know that just a few of them thinks that these collaborative activities are not doing well, in the sense that students do not assume their responsibilities, so the task is not completed. And we as teachers need to help students to overcome these problems in order to succeed, not just in the classroom, but in life. And in this picture, you can observe how the collaborative sense in the production of this written text create a nice atmosphere, a safe atmosphere for students to create, to create written products that will be shown in our journals. And now let's continue with Maria Elena telling us the Brazilian experience.
Okay. So just have to exchange the slides here. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I'll again briefly talk about the Brazilian experience. I won't be as specific as Roxana about all this methodology because she has already done that. So this is where it happened. This is a school where I work. It's Instituto Federal de Santa Catarina, Campus Palhoça. And the project we developed, well, the writing activity was an acrostic. It was the result of all the process. So it was a creative writing based on a social problem that was beauty standard. So during the time of a semester, we discussed and we reflect on this theme, beauty standard, because although it is not a specific problem for these students, it is a problem for them. It's something that affects all of us, but especially teenagers. And working with teenagers, we see how this affects how they see themselves, how they perceive themselves and each other. And especially nowadays with the social media, it is something that is very, very, there's a big highlight on this aspect because of all the filters and because of all this pursuit of being physically perfect, and how all the strategies to do that are constantly changing through surgeries, through aesthetic procedures. And this can harm very much the psychological aspect as well as physical aspect of teenagers' existence of their nowadays their everyday lives. So we consider this a very important topic, and this generated very fruitful discussions and reflections along the semester through many different text genres. So we used the articles, but we mainly used lyrics because the students tend, like teenagers, they tend to relate to singers they like. And when they realize that these singers they admire are going through similar process and they express that through their lyrics, they could relate to that. So lyrics proved to be a text genre that really enhance the discussions and make them relate to the problem and relate to the people. So it helped them to be more open about it and realize how much they are affected, because sometimes when they don't think critically about the issue, maybe they don't realize how much it affects them. And that's how this process of discussion and reflection went, so that we got to the creation, to the expressions through writing and acrostic, which was an interest process because it was a double challenge for students. First, the fact that they had to write in English. Second, that an acrostic is like a poetry. So they have to write a poetry in English. And it was interesting because sometimes they shouldn't, like they struggle a lot with English, but they wanted to write the poetry. They wanted to express themselves because they were driven, as I said, especially by the lyrics, by how they felt after all this discussion. So it was really a very creative process, one that had all the aspects that Roxana mentioned before, but also ended up as a very personal product in writing. And these are some of the results, some of the acrostics they wrote, that is will be published in the journal. And briefly, finding resilience in writing. So in our writing process, we learned that acceptance is not an easy process, but it's a necessary one, that true beauty comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. There's no perfection without imperfection, and both are equally important. Nothing can bring a greater sense of fulfillment in life than being true to who you are and being happy with who you are. This was one of the conclusions we got to. And the acrostics, as much as Roxana's students' work, will be presented in this beautiful journal. So here we have the first volume from 2021. his is the volume that is going to be now launched in 2023. And as final remarks, what we observed in students is after this experience, they felt less fear and more confidence, that this experience helped empowering students' voice, helped stamping our local identity, because they were talking about their local context or their own experiences. We worked as language as a social practice and promoted collaborative work and creativity. And here we bring some references that were very helpful, essential through this work. And well, in a nutshell, that's it. Thank you very, very much.